The Japanese occupation gave birth to the spirit of nationalism amongst the local people. In July of 1937, a conflict between Japanese and Chinese soldiers occurred on the Marco Polo Bridge. This incident was the beginning of the Second Sino-Japanese War that would drag on for years. While the Japanese fought against the Soviet and American-backed Chinese, the rest of the world was occupied with the beginning of the Second World War happening in Europe in 1939. These simultaneous wars led to the tripartite pact between Japan, Germany and Italy forming the Axis powers in the war. The Axis powers had similar interests and similar enemies, the Allied forces. When the United States launched their embargo against Japan, the Japanese army started to run out of important resources for war such as tin, rubber and oil. Japan needed a way to get their hands on these natural resources without having to import it from the Allied forces. Their resolution to this issue was expansionism. At the time, it was common knowledge that Southeast Asia was rich with resources, especially rubber. Malaysia had a third of the world's rubber supply. Rubber is an important material for the ongoing war. It is used in almost all vehicles and machines for war. Malaya was also a colony of the British, an enemy of Japan. Hence, the Japanese made the decision to invade Malaya and then the rest of the Southeast Asia. On 8th of December 1941, Japanese troops arrived on the coast of Kelantan. They also prepared to invade Malaya on the west coast by airbombing Kedah. Once the Japanese entered Malaya successfully, they used bicycles to travel south towards Singapore. Bicycles were used by the Japanese because of two reasons. Firstly, the Japanese knew that Malaya was abundant with them. Prior to the war, Japan had exported many bicycles to Malaya. Hence, they would not have to bring their own when invading Malaya. Secondly, bicycles were lightweight and fast. Whenever the Japanese troops had to cross a river, they would simply carry it on their shoulders. Hence, the Japanese chose it as their transport while invading Southeast Asia. The Japanese fought many battles against the British troops and their allies in Malaya. These include the Battle of Jitra, Battle of Kampar, the Battle of Slim River, and finally the Battle of Noor. Although the Japanese had less soldiers, tanks and other weapons, they were able to win most of the battles. This is usually because the British were underprepared and undermined the enemy. The Japanese invasion of Malaya was quick. By 31st January 1942, they had successfully invaded Malaya. New Malaya was formed under the Japanese government. Japan recognizes and accepts the Sultan position. More local Malays were trained in administration, which led to awakening of nationalism spirit among local Malays. Economy was focused on industrialization. Rubber and tin mines were undeveloped. Inflation rate increased due to the wide distribution of new Japanese currency without any collateral value. Japanese language Nihongo was introduced. Internal migration due to the lack of food. There was poor healthcare. The Japanese treated the Chinese community in a cruel manner, which led to the formation of Malayan People's Anti-Japanese Army, MPAJA, by them. Male laborers were forced to work in the death railway track. Many were tortured in a brutal way. Females were raped and children were killed during the Japanese occupation. The Japanese had occupied Malaya for 3.5 years. In August 1945, the Japanese invasion of Malaya ended. The struggles endured during the Japanese occupation gave birth to the spirit of nationalism amongst the local people. After much struggles, Malaysia got its independence from colonization on August 31st, 1957. Now, Malaysia is a peaceful country, but the impacts of colonization are still there.